Running Light Ministry podcast is brought to you by listeners like you. You can support these podcasts by making a gift to the ministries at runninglight.org.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Running Light Better Pleasure podcast. This is going to be podcast number 145.
Wow. 145.
145.
That's amazing.
And I'm here with Katy Collins. He's a part of the Running Light Ministries government.
I got the power.
That's right, you certainly do. And it's good to have you with me today.
Yeah.
You know, I'm usually with Peter Martin, and it's nice to have a female.
It's good to be
We
here.
can say that, right?
We can. I am.
You are a female.
I am.
Bona fide.
Bona fide.
Through and through.
Yep. Identify.
Can you prove it?
I can.
Because I have a picture of our goddaughter, which is your daughter, right there.
Yep.
How
That's
about
right.
that?
I made a baby.
Made a baby. And I can't do that,
No.
no matter how much I try.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, no problem.
It's
no
a good
problem.
thing.
But it's good to have you kind of do these podcasts. I would love to have you do them more regularly.
Yeah.
Because me and Peter, talk about things so much from a male perspective.
Yeah.
And Peter's so theoretical in his thoughts. And sometimes I have to bring it into more of a practical thing.
I'll be listening and I'll be like, okay. Oh, thanks, Bo.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Peter. But, a lot of times we don't get a chance to get that female perspective, about the church and about sexual issues. And we kind of can miss a little bit, there, I'm sure. I'm reading a real good book I was telling you about right now, but it's by Mary Eberstadt, and it's called Adam and Eve After the Pill, Paradoxes of the Sexual Revolution. And this is really interesting book because it takes what many of us have been brought up in our culture to see as a good thing, which is the sexual revolution in the United States. And when I was being brought up, I always thought of it as a positive because that's really was the forerunner for, in a sense, women's liberation.
Right.
And that's kind of what, they both went hand in hand. The sexual revolution was women's liberation movement. The pill was a part of women's liberation. And she makes her argument that it actually is the other way around.
Wow.
That it actually has not liberated women, but has actually made it more difficult for women to find partners, lifelong partners. Marriages are more unhappy today. Children are more unhappy today. And the difficulties, emotional difficulties, and mental difficulties are way more because of it. So it's really an interesting book, you know. But you work within the church, you work with women, young people, older people. A lot of times we fail, I think, to realize that women probably struggle with sexual things too.
Yeah. That's true.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what kind of things have you kind of been involved in, or what you see?
Yeah, for sure. I think I've hung out with females from probably maybe 10 years old to 60s, 70s who have some version of a skew of sexuality in their life. And their experience of it, their relationship to it, their own value and identity found in it or not. So it's across the board, for sure. And that I'm thinking of in the church. So yeah, for sure. It is not just a man's issue, as you guys say. It's definitely, it impacts us all. And I think it's just, we don't know even what to think. I think there are women, I probably could say every woman in the church would say, I don't even know what holy sex is, or what healthy, holy and healthy views of intimacy, my value, my body.
Yeah, and this is something that we kind of hit so much, and I know early on in my running light writings, I hit this quite a bit, is that, that women have it really rough within Christendom in general and in the church in general. In this way is that women, if you think it's tough for men to come out and talk about something that to me seems so normal,
right?
Like to me, like pornography is so normal. It's not only normal in the culture, but to me it's normal as far as human behavior. Like nothing's weird with looking at something fascinating.
Right.
Like that would be, every kid does it. And we don't think anything weird of the child. When a child is enamored by something,
right,
or taken in by something.
Right.
We don't spank the child because the child is in a sense fixated on something that is fascinating. And yet human sexuality is something that is really fascinating. And so to me that's normal.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult, obviously, for a lot of men just to admit that, hey, man, I like looking at, pretty people.
Right.
Whatever pretty is in their mind.
Sure. Yeah.
But women in the church, you got a woman that rides the harlot.
Yeah,
you got,
right.
the whore of Babylon. You got Israel is depicted as a prostitute, an adulterous wife. So you have a theme throughout the Bible,
for sure,
that is very much built on a loving God and who's married to a group of people, and a group of people are like a woman that go astray.
Right.
And that's the theme.
All the way through.
All the way through.
Yeah.
So you have that, it
right.
seems like, against a woman.
Right.
And
it's like, instead of the male components of the body being like, man, I am her,
right.
It flips, and we as women are either demure, don't do anything, don't speak, or we're the harlot, we're the whore. And no matter what we do, it's on us.
And that's weird, because I like what you said is that a lot of guys don't look at it like, hey, I'm the whore.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm the whore. Like, I'm the prostitute.
Right.
And instead, we kind of tend to look at women and go, oh, women are the prostitutes.
Right.
And St. Augustine, of course, got so wrapped up into this, where he, not just him, but other, quote, church fathers really looked at Eve and went into a very sexual deviancy of her. They saw sex as being the effect, like the problem, the result of her somehow flirtatiousness with the serpent, and it gets really twisted
for
quick.
Sure. Yeah.
So women, of course, are deemed as the bad person.
Right.
So what's it like for a woman to be sitting in a church and then going, man, you know what? I kind of like something, but I'm super scared. I'm
already gonna be, put in this pot. So for sure. I mean, I think it's the gradient is so large that we as women in the church, we've got to make sure we're wearing the right thing, we're not wearing the right thing, all these things all the time. And so then that's such a upper level of stuff that we're constantly concerned about, or did I cross my legs the wrong way, did I we're just kind of constantly always thinking about how we're somehow being this negative evil effect, that then to now go way deeper and go, actually I do struggle with lust on whatever level, and how in the world am I going to share that, and with who would I even begin to talk about that with? And and then there's just so much wrapped up into it. There's so many complex issues, like there are with men as well. But like, why do we even go to it? What is going on in our hearts? What do we even see ourselves as? It's just such a piece of that the body, the church doesn't do a good service, offering a place. Usually to talk about it. And
there's this older lady that came to me once in the ministry, and she said, hey, she was super private about it, of course, and the only reason she came to me is because she knows the ministry that I do, probably.
Right.
but she was like, hey, Bo, I just feel horrible about this. It's like my mind is so wicked, and I'm just thinking so many evil thoughts, and and I can't seem to get these sexual thoughts out of my mind, and da-da-da-da-da. And here you have an older lady, who's been in the church probably 50 years, I don't know, 40 years, something like that. And she was saying things like, it'd be great if I was like this, or great if I had that issue, or great if I, and like, she just did not want this issue. Yeah. This was like kind of the bad thing. Right. And to me, that's sad. There's a lot of sadness there, that the church hasn't done a very good job.
And I mean, it makes me think, because like we are created sexual, like you just said, like from the garden, it was good. There's holiness too, our beauty, our affections, all these things that we're missing, and then I feel like you bring in the accuser of the brethren too. And so then, we're sitting there going, oh man, this is the worst. I'm the worst, instead of, wow, this is just like very natural going on, and sin is common to man. But then, as chicks, like she's coming to you going, man, can I even say these words to a man, to a pastor? Am I going to stumble in by even, Yeah. and then so we just shut down. Like, how can we even bring it out,
Yeah. And that's interesting, because there's so much going on. And when you're in a kind of a more of a male dominated field, like the ministry in evangelicalism, I could see where that could be a thing, where you're like, I don't want to talk to this guy. I'm going to stumble this person, and I'm going to stumble that person. And that's unfortunate. And this is where I think Jesus is so cool, right? This is why we love Jesus so much.
So much.
And I was even going through the prophets, like Elijah, and just Elijah with the widow, and what an odd thing, for a prophet of God to be all alone with a widow, hanging out with her and spending time with her. That's really neat.
It's really neat.
And Jesus spending time with women. Yeah. And I always talk about being a safe place. Like, in this book that Mary wrote, Eberstadt, she not only talks about the sexual revolution and its effect on women, but she also talks about its effect on men too. Yeah. And because men are, over the years just haven't been very safe people. And and everything is always framed as a women's issue. It's like it seems like everything is always like, that abortion, women's issue, child rearing, women's issue, those type of things. Sure. And you always fail to remember there's another person involved in the sex act, right? There's a male. And so, there's, me and Peter have talked a lot about how men just have in a lot of ways failed ultimately. And when it comes to even today's issues like transgenderism or lesbianism that are rampant in young girls, you have to look at men, and not just men as in like you being a father out there, because you might be a good father, but your daughter's doing her thing, right? But it's men in general, like worldwide. Sure. Like you growing up, what did you have to look forward to when it came to learning about men? Right. And how safe men were. Right. Yeah. And it probably wasn't that safe even when you were younger.
No, for sure. I mean, it's like the joke, right, that you go after chicks with daddy issues, because it's just we all, kind of have them there. So there's totally something important there to consider, and just what my mom was the working income earner, that strong kind of leadership position, just like I've even tried to encourage Ben recently about like just the amount of time you spend with her. It doesn't even have to be anything grand, but just that attention and affection begins to root in her what is healthy. Because I think a lot of us probably just had a lack, even like just a physical, emotional lack of that, and then of course you talk to the abuse side of it, that's different. And so then we went, like the cistern was empty, our hearts were empty, we were hungry. And so then we go, hey, is this going to be good? Is this going to be worth it?
Yeah, fulfilling. Or whatever it is.
And it's just so powerful. Like, I think in general, maybe moms spend more time with the children, but like I feel like if you could quantify it, the amount of impact a father has on a daughter and sons, I'm sure, but I'm just speaking to my experience, is like hugely disproportionate. Just hanging out, just being together, creates that, this is what I should look for, this is what's healthy, this attention that I'm getting is healthy, this affection that I'm getting is healthy.
What do you see in the younger culture, if they do have even strong parents, like good parents, because there's a lot of especially evangelical parents that are walking with the Lord and love God, but their children are just kind of doing their thing. They're part of a culture that's really strong.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think, I think the culture is so strong. Let's say it's like a waterfall. And even if the strength of the parental influence is there, if it's like a faucet, dripping or something. So it's just, there's just time that needs to be given. Less time of, one and more time of another. And, I think it's just so available. And so my question would be, how available are you? How available are you to your children? And because the culture is so available, it's so there, and it's so attractive. I remember I never got into drugs, but I was so attracted to my friends who were in that world. There was just such a pull, and that would be my case over and over with whatever I did choose to step into. Such an attraction, such a pull, and so is not Jesus better? Well, then how are we showing that, and how are we showing that just an attractiveness to the things that are healthy and holy?
It's so hard probably today because the river or the waterfall is so strong, if we use that analogy, in the sense that it's just right there with them. They turn on a computer, they get on their phone. That's the waterfall, right? It's right there. It's beautiful,
and it smells great, and it tastes great. It's so attractive, and it's so acceptable. Like, it's right, and there's just this torrential yes. Whatever you think you want, whatever you don't know what you want, but you've got this random little feeling, or this, whatever. Yes. Yeah.
And it's weird. We're more, and this is what Mary points out in the book, but the more liberated we think we are, the more in trouble we are.
Yeah.
The more emotionally in trouble we are, the more depressed we are. And I know growing up a secular progressive, our answer to that was always, the reason why that's the case is because we just haven't done it right. Like, meaning we just, we haven't been gay long enough. We haven't been trans long enough. We haven't been, drag long enough. If we were accepted and we allowed ourselves to, everybody allowed us to do whatever we wanted to do, then we would live in a society of acceptance, and then we would be fine. And this
like
is
actualized, right?
Actualized. I'd feel better about myself. This kind of thing, and that's why, because it's not normalized yet. And so when it becomes normalized, then the suicide rates will go down, and that's what we thought 30 years ago.
Right.
And it's funny how the same arguments are today.
Sure.
It's funny, if you listen to TV shows on social issues in the 50s, you're going to hear the same things today. Yeah. It's always the same thing. Yeah. But I look at it this way too, like just in an empirical way. Like the most empirical evidence we have today is that suicides are up. Kids are super depressed. Yeah. Can't seem to find themselves. They have more options today than they've ever had. They've been more liberated than ever. We have done a incredible test over 50 years now of legalized pornography. And we've done a really interesting child test over the last 25 years of free internet pornography.
Right.
And so if you've ever wondered like what it would have been like to go to like your local liquor store and just pick up a porn magazine and just look at it, you know, and you always go, I wonder what would have been the results of that.
Right.
Like, well, now we kind of know.
Free access. Yeah,
we've had free access long enough in a generation
sure,
to kind of look at it and go like, okay, what is the ramifications?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Ray Rist, who was the head of a government body that was put together in the 70s on pornography, they did amazing writings on the legalization of pornography back then. And the only thing they put in there is of any restrictions is really, we probably don't want to just have kids do this. We don't know what the results will be if we legalize
like partake?
this. If we legalize this for kids.
Okay.
But we don't really assume that there's going to be a negative reaction to it. But our suggestion to the government is that they still have a restriction,
Age restriction for like
age restriction
accessing
for
it.
access.
Okay.
So that I wonder today if they did another commission report. Another commission basically.
Right.
And they said, hey, let's look at what the results are. I wonder if there would be an understanding that maybe the suicide rates and the trying to find yourself and very mixed up, very confused, very manic depressive issues, bipolar issues, have anything to do with their exposure to sex in a variety of ways at a very young age.
For sure.
Where now you have large groups of kids and girls that are watching, they don't watch, my porn growing up. They're watching hardcore porn.
Sure. Yeah.
And, and lesbian porn can be pretty rough.
Yeah.
Intense, there's different genres of lesbian porn. But if a young girl's watching stuff and she's clicking on different things, she's watching some pretty serious stuff.
For sure.
Yeah. And there's no doubt that would impact your heart, especially knowing that your peer group also is watching it.
Right.
So if your peer group's watching it, then you would probably be like, oh, well, it's got to be okay.
Right. Yeah.
And then you would go, I wonder, like about me. Like,
yeah,
I wonder,
how do I fit in there?
How do I fit in?
What does that mean for me? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I wonder how that kind of cause and effect would be looked at today.
Yeah.
With all the issues that you face, when you're talking to younger people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's funny, like I'm sure, like when you talk to young girls, not all of them probably view porn.
No, sure. But it's affecting the culture they're in, and their peers, like you said, whether their peers are watching it or, I was working in a junior high and anyways, the kids were, in that 10, 12 age range, and they just, get flashed to stuff, like right in the hallway, right in front of me, somebody would turn their phone to them, or whatever, and, or record, or they're being recorded, even if they don't have a cell phone, but, so all of this is going on, and so now they're being recorded, and then they're being superimposed maybe into pornography or something like that, or, their friends are creating things.
Which a lot of people don't know you can do.
You don't even know you knew. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so talk about like, you may not even be trying to be involved in that, but it's a part of what, your peers are thinking, how they're seeing you, how they're viewing, their own sexuality and then body image stuff. And there's just an identity and value and, absolutely. It's all there and all wrapped up. And
yeah, I remember, I think it's Anna, I want to say it. Oh God, what's her name? Is it Aerospan? Or she's a pro porn producer, but I've heard some of her debates years ago, and she would always say like people would argue about body image, and I remember her always saying, "Well, hey, you want fat people, then you look at fatpeople.com. You look at, you want hairy people, you look at hairypeople.com. You know, like she was saying, hey, porn is a conglomerate of
whatever
many
you want.
types and images. And but it still doesn't bode well for the adolescent. You know, maybe I could see where an adult might be able to get that and understand, like, oh, okay, like I can go online and, you know, I
can find people that look like me or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. You know, but when you're a young person growing up, body image is going to hit you no matter what, because you're in a clan. Yeah. You're in a peer group clan. Yeah. And so you're forced by nature to have to look at the clan. Yeah. At the crew, at the people. And every single person is insecure. Right. In that clan. Yeah. And every single one's going through the same crap. They have no idea how to fit in their clothes anymore, and, you know, all these things. And so they're all reaching for something to, define what is beautiful, what is acceptable, what is attractive. Yeah. Yeah. And I know that growing up, we you know, we used to pierce ourselves a lot, and sometimes we would cut ourselves and different things like that. But it was always based around like an identity, finding ourselves, being a part of a group. So we would find a lot of my culture wrapped around music. Music was the big identifier. So if you were into heavy metal, you weren't into new wave. If you were into new wave, you weren't into heavy metal. That's just how it was. Yeah. When you were into heavy metal, you dressed as in your heavy metal. You pierced yourself like a heavy metal person. Right. You tattooed yourself. You did whatever the studs did, the stars did of that genre, you did. Yeah. People that were into people like Depeche Mode, Morrissey, you know, the Smiths, Susie and the Banshees, people like that. Yeah. They were more new wavy style, poppy style. Men would look more feminine. Sure. And talk maybe more feminine. Whereas metal people, it was weird. We looked very draggish in a lot of ways. Yeah. We dressed with tight clothes, but we wore our hair really long, and we kind of feathered it almost like a woman would. Yeah. We would even take out the aqua net, you know, on a great night. Yeah. You know what I mean? And blow it all out. Make it big. You know, make it big and stuff like that. And it was and even sometimes, you know, like a little bit of makeup here and there wasn't odd, you know, to us guys. Even though we would never talk feminine, you know, but we had bands that were very feminine, you know, that would kind of portray this drag look, you know, so that wasn't really weird, but we all had these little niches, you know, within it. And it seems like today, you know, with the proliferation of pornography, the amount of pornography, and I've always told Peter that the tragedy of porn isn't watching porn. That's not the tragedy, because that's normal. Yeah. You know, we, even in a monogamous Christian marriage, you're being turned on by a naked body. Normal. Yeah. Nothing, we would never say no to that. Right. You know, so looking at someone naked is not the tragedy. Yeah. The tragedy is the distribution. Yeah. And when you have such a mass amount of distribution of something like pornography, just so much, not just pornography, I'm not talking about the porn industry per se, but I'm just talking about so much sensuality that's out there in whatever medium, you know. Then you have adolescents who have to try to find an identity. They're trying to, and they might latch on to music, you know, but the strongest identity certainly it's got to be sexual. Yeah. You know, that has got to be the strongest pull. For sure. I mean, I even just think like physiologically it is, you know, physiologically you're being dumped with new hormones and all, you know, like it's a strong, if not the strongest pull maybe in your growing body, you know, that whole thing. And so,
Yeah. And then, and it's the most like intensely rewarding, you know, music is great, but there's, you know, this other side of sexuality, sensuality, intimacy that's just intensely rewarding. And then you go, man, I didn't think I was into that, but that felt great. Now what? And now my culture is saying absolutely go. I mean, when you were saying like, you know, it's like there's decision fatigue, you know, the proliferation of porn there, and even just like
I like that word,
decision fatigue.
Yeah. Decision fatigue.
You're everything's available, but now you're just too tired to even make a choice. What is, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's you know, pictures of yourself. Maybe there's this whole category of like formalized maybe porn, but maybe it's just, man, we're sending pictures, we're doing this thing. It's all you and me down the hall. It's all, you know. So there's just this, decision fatigue. And when you said this, like, Mary mentioned this, like, the freedom within boundaries, it made me think of this idea that, like, when I struggle with food too, because when we struggle with one thing, we struggle with a bunch of things, but I struggle with food, and man, I found the most freedom when I found a boundary that I could exist within, and then like run like a wild pony within that boundary. But boundaries are beautiful, and so instead we've like said, hey man, throw off the boundaries, and you're not going to be fully you and fully free until you just push and push and push and push and push, when really, you know. And I remember and I
love that analogy, by the way, of the pony and the boundary.
Yeah.
You know, because if you take out the boundary, you know, and you let a pony go, you know, that pony, is going to have some really fun times, you know, but there's a lot of danger that pony's not going to know about. Yeah. And probably that pony will die. Right. At some point. Yeah. You know. Yeah.
Break a leg out there, not have food. You know, there's beauty in boundaries, and especially when we're talking from a biblical worldview that love is boundaried. And so in this like angsty yearning for who am I and what is love, well, love, God himself, is boundaried, you know, and that's for our good. And so I remember a moment in high school when I was messing around with a guy in my bedroom and wishing my parents were downstairs, wishing they'd come up and not let the door be closed. And I just think of that, like, I think even in our moments of youth where we're trying to figure it out and we like buck, you know, parental authority and get out of my life, there is something, and you said, she talked about that no, just keep pushing past that something in your gut that's like, is this me? Is this what I want? Is this good? Is this right? Is this love? Push past it, man. Once you're finally fully, you know, actualized, or once it's finally fully accepted, then you'll be okay. Yeah. And I remember, lots of times where I actually wished for those boundaries, for that protection, that love, you know.
Yeah, and that seems like the cultural battle, right? Is really, it's one of love, what love looks like. Right. You know, does it have boundaries? Does it not have boundaries? Yeah. Those type of things. So, there's a lot of neat things that we're going to be able to podcast on for sure. Yeah. And kind of delve deep into. You know, my heart's always for the women in the church. You know, I know they're sexual beings. And so I know that there's a probably a vacuum, you know, and I'm glad that, you know, our church has been able to at least make things available and promote opportunities for ladies, and we've done that for years and years now. And it's great to have you, you know, kind of on board and back in Tucson over the last, what, year? You've been here now? Year and a half?
Not even a year.
Not even a year. Yeah. And you know, because you've worked with us before, and then you were gone, and now you're back.
And then I was gone. Now we're back.
Now you're back. And so it's nice, and hopefully we get more of you. Yeah. And because you're working in, to really come alongside and mentor and counsel people. Yeah. And that's really a big heart of yours. And you've always been very gifted to be able to express God's heart, his emotional heart, and I think some really cool ways. Thanks. So I'm looking forward to the podcast.
Me too.
You know, so thanks for listening to this edition of the podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Check out runninglight.org to begin our 2 video series, Take Flight and Love or Lust. You can also send us questions on Twitter at Running Light or on our runninglight.org podcast page. Like us on Facebook at Running Light Ministries, Psalm 36:8. They are abundantly satisfied with the fullness of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your pleasures.